Hey everybody, and welcome back to Careers in a Crunch. I'm Arti, and today I'm joined by Meredith Mialkowski, and I'm super excited to have her on my podcast and hear about her professional journey. So I want to thank you once again for being here. I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here too. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. So yeah, I guess we can just um get into some questions. So, oops. All right. Okay. So my first question is, what did you major in, and how did that have an impact on your career, if it did at all?
Sure. I went to a liberal arts college. I went to Middlebury College. I was a double major in psychology and Spanish. So those are definitely different than the legal profession that I'm in now. But I think really like a liberal arts education, I took classes in a variety of subjects, which was a requirement for graduation. And I think that really helped. Really, with law school, I guess one of the good things about it is you can major in anything and then still apply to law school. It doesn't have to be like a political science major or pre-law or anything like that. So, uh, you know, um, in my initial career, when I became an attorney, I guess psychology was sort of helpful, but with what I do now, like estates and trusts and dealing with families, especially during difficult times, I think the psychology part really did help, just to have that sort of background and training.
Yeah, I
And
think
the
that,
Spanish is useful no matter what. It's
yeah.
always helpful. I can bring out my Spanish every now and then, and try not to have it be too rusty. It's always helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I really liked how you like this. I guess I wouldn't as think that like a psychology major would be helpful in law, but I guess when you kind of think about the more emotional side of law and like you were saying, estate, families, difficult times, I think it's so applicable there. So
It
yeah.
is, it is. It was just a good background for really communicating with people and sort of being a good listener, which I think are helpful skills definitely for a lawyer to have. So I was really appreciative of that background.
Yeah. So I know that your first legal role was with the New York City Housing like Authorities Law Department. And I was just interested to know sort of what that experience kind of taught you about the legal profession.
Yeah, so I actually think it's great for anyone who wants to be a lawyer coming out of law school. They can get an opportunity to work for like it was quasi governmental sort of in-house counsel experience. I think it's really helpful. So I was actually an intern between my second and third years of law school at NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, and they let us as interns sort of get involved in all the different areas of law that they do. So they had litigation, they had real estate, they had contracts, um, housing court, like they had all these different areas because you're in-house counsel, so you support everything that the housing authority does. So I really enjoyed that. I got to see all the different areas of law, and then I was hired back when I graduated from law school. And because of the government agency, they sort of allow you to have a lot of experience from an early stage. So it's sort of like baptism by fire in some respects. There's guidance and they help you, but they really do give you the cases and they sort of expect you with some guidance, obviously, but you have a lot of ownership on the work that you have. So
Mhm.
even before I was admitted to law school with permission from the court, I got to argue one of my cases before the appellate division, which was really intense experience, especially, coming out of law school. But I mean, you'd never get that really in the private sector. They just wouldn't probably give you that much responsibility. I eventually I tried the different areas of the law department, and then after the first year, you kind of can decide if they want to keep you, if you want to stay on. And then I stayed with commercial litigation because that's what I decided I wanted to do. So once I got into that division, they also gave me a lot of cases, experience. I got to go to court all the time by myself because I was fully admitted at this point. I had big cases. I remember like in the first year there was like a $2 million lawsuit that I was defending. So just it's really great experience if you want to start and you really want to get out there and do things on your own. And I was really lucky when I was at the housing authority. I had some really great mentors. Most of them were actually women, which was really nice, and they sort of showed me the ropes and best practices for being an attorney. And I think that really stuck with me. I think that's a really great way to start for a new lawyer. It's really hands-on experience.
Yeah, I think it's so cool how you had that kind of like experience, like the opportunity to kind of like see like a day-to-day type basis of like what it is like to be a lawyer. And I think it's really cool how you had the opportunity to kind of try different kind of sections of law. Like you were saying,
Mhm.
there was a lot of different areas that you could um, see because I think law, there's a lot of branches off of it. I think that's a really cool, and yeah, it's just, that was really
It
cool.
was a great experience. It was definitely a good way, as you said, to investigate and see, do I want to go to court? Do I like that? Do I prefer contracts? Do I prefer like negotiation that way, like more transactional areas? So I think it was a really good opportunity to explore, which I don't think you can get in other sectors. So like this quasi government in-house counsel was a good way to start.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so did you ever have kind of any doubts about your path or consider doing something different?
I think I decided somewhere like end of sophomore year of college that maybe junior year that I had to choose whether I was going to really go the graduate school route for psychology, which was like very academic, a lot more time, and sort of different. And I at some point I pivoted and said, you know what, I think I'm going to take this and try to go to law school and see what that's like. So once I got to law school, I was like confident that this is where I wanted to be. And I had a really good experience. Like I said, I was the intern for the housing authority, and then I got that job when I came out of law school, and I did that for a number of years. And then I left. Basically, I had kids, and I stopped for a bit. And then when it was time for me to come back into the workforce, I decided I still wanted to be a lawyer, but I wanted to pivot and do a different type of law.
Mhm.
Which I think is a really great thing about having a legal career is that you can make a pivot and sort of learn a different area of law, especially if you have a mentor or someone willing to teach you, which is sort of what happened to me. I decided I wanted to move away from solely doing litigation work to then sort of doing this wills, trusts, estates, and guardianships. So it's part court, but also part not court, which was nice. And I found a really great law firm. And again, another group of female attorneys who were willing to mentor me and sort of teach me this area of law. I'd taken some classes in law school in this area, and I had done some continuing legal education classes. So I sort of knew this is where I wanted to go. And it worked out that way. Um,
Yeah.
it was a good pivot for me.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting and cool how you were like, I guess, able to make that switch. Like, I didn't realize that kind of as someone who is a lawyer, you're able to kind of make that switch. And I think it's so cool because I think, like, I guess, like you were saying, after a number of years working in one section of litigation, you kind of could see what else was out there. And I think it's really cool you brought up, like, all the mentors you had and, like, female mentors specifically. Yeah, and I think that's just really great.
I was really lucky, and I'm still in touch with them. They still, work with some of them now, still in my firm. So it's really important, I think, to seek out these mentors like these, especially if you're a woman, another woman who can be a mentor. There's a lot of people out there who are willing to help you if you are willing to ask for the help or find them. I think
Yeah,
that's really important.
yeah, definitely. Um, so you mentioned kind of how you now like work in like estate and that kind of portion. And a lot of your work, I think, involves kind of helping families and kind of like difficult events. So, how do you sort of kind of balance both like the legal side and the like emotional side?
You know, sometimes it is tough. We are dealing with people who have, lost a spouse or lost a child, lost a parent, and they are looking to you for guidance to figure out, what to do in the court system, how to probate a will if that's what you need to do, how to get assets. Um, So they're looking to me as a professional, and they're looking to me to support them. I have to listen to what they have to tell me, and it's important to sort of separate the emotional component of what they're telling me, these really sad, sometimes awful stories, and sort of give them the strength that they need, the support, the guidance. They're looking to me for like my professional opinion. Um, but there are periods of time when it is hard to hear these stories. It does make me sad to hear. I try to, I have some empathy for the clients that I'm listening to. And sometimes I think it helps to have some separation. So, I try not to, unless it's an absolute emergency. I try to keep the weekends, work free in that sense. I come back on Monday if I need, if obviously there's an emergency, then I have to deal with it on the weekend. But usually in this area of law, there's not so many emergencies. So I do try to keep some work-life balance because at times it can be, a lot of sad information or hard news. But I think at the same time, that psychology background comes in. I am trained to be a good listener, and people want to share their stories with me, or sometimes, I'm hearing things about family dynamics that may be upsetting, or siblings that they don't speak to anymore, or some stories like that. So it's really helpful to be a good listener and let them get out what they need to say, and then give them the advice that they're looking for when they come to me.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, I think everything you said, like I agree with, like I think you were saying about being a good listener. I think that's really important, and how you were saying also psychology, like you were saying the psychology background kind of comes in handy when you're sort of hearing about these emotional stories. But like you were saying, kind of keeping that balance, being there for your clients, but then also kind of, keeping time for obviously your own family and things like that, and it's really important. So, yeah, and kind of going off of that question, um, kind of what part of your job do you personally find most exciting, but also what kind of is the more challenging aspect?
So that's a good question. I think that the positive parts are I am there for people when they need me. I think sometimes lawyers get a bad reputation in certain areas of law. People are not happy with lawyers. They don't want to talk to their lawyer. But in these situations, lawyers really are supporting people and helping them, whether it's discussing an estate plan and where they want their minor children to go if something were to happen to both of them,
Mhm.
or somebody who's passing away and you have to guide them through the
Yeah.
surrogate's court and the probate process. I think it's rewarding. I think they come to you, they're really looking for your advice. They don't know what to do, and I'm happy that I have the ability to provide them with guidance and sort of help alleviate at least one stressful aspect of this, and guide them through the process. In terms of I guess challenging, so I'm a partner, but I own a law firm. It's an all women owned law firm as well. And I think a lot of times they don't teach you the business aspects, but
Mhm.
there is, it's not just the legal and dealing with clients and that, but it's also the whole business process. Like marketing, how do we get clients in? And then I have employees, so we need to know like all the employment law and rights and all these things, 401ks and all the business part, tax returns, accounting things, just running a business is something that they don't necessarily teach you
Mhm.
anywhere. They sort of had to learn as I go along. It's just been, parts of that can be challenging because it's something I hadn't really done before. Luckily, my law partner had been an owner and partner for a while, so when I came on to join her, she guided me through some of the things, but I think that's been, there are aspects of that that are certainly challenging, that I hadn't really had experience with that yet.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, any career sort of has that like business aspect. And I guess like when I sort of think about jobs, you kind of just think more about like I guess the more like kind of like maybe academic side of it. And then like in law, you're kind of thinking about court and dealing with clients. But like you were saying, there really is like the business behind the scenes that not a lot of people I think really like kind of understand. But like you were saying, it's really important I think to learn about that. And you were also saying that like people you don't really get taught that. So I think experience kind of teaches you that over time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. There's definitely things that are helpful to know. It would have been good to have some kind of guidance or classes or something. I think I don't even remember if they even offered a class like that in law school. I certainly didn't take it, but going back, I probably should have, knowing where I ended up. But it would have been useful.
Yeah. Um, and then sort of also going off of that, like I think a lot of students think law is I think mostly about court and that lawyers spend all of their time in court. But I think what does like a typical day really look like for you?
So we do some court proceedings. So I am in court sometimes. But certainly not every day. Maybe a couple of times a month even. I think there's different areas of law. There are people who focus on litigation and they are in court or doing depositions or trial prep, discovery, and that does take up a large portion of their time. It's not actually in court, but it's all this preparation involved before you get to court, so that you're prepared for what happens. I mean, the court time is not as long as the preparation for sure. Um, my day, usually there's responding to emails, there's responding to phone calls, there's, reaching out to clients to see, what they need from me. I have a lot of meetings with people, either, by Zoom or Teams, or they come into my office for consultations to talk about estate plans or other matters. So a lot of it really is, and then there is time we're drafting, I'm drafting documents, I'm drafting wills, I'm drafting powers of attorney, advanced directives. We do motions in court. So there is like writing involved and drafting. So it's, I think with what I do, it's a really good mix of court and also, non-court activity, more like transactional work, which I think I like the combination of the two. When I was in commercial litigation, it was all is what much more court only kind of court papers. So I like that there's a split here. I didn't want to go back and have it just be all court. But there's definitely carve outs in the law. If you're someone who is like, I never want to step foot in a courtroom ever, there's a place for you in law. Like, there's things that you can do where you don't have to step foot in a courtroom at any time. So I think it's really important to know, like, there's just so many things you can do in the law and different ways you can take it, the career. And I think the thing that is really good about law as well is that there's a lot of longevity. I know like lawyers who practice well into their, late 70s, 80s. I mean, it's kind of a profession that is as lifelong if that's where you want it to go.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's really cool how many different kind of things there are in law. Like I think oftentimes, I guess before I kind of always thought obviously court is something that is always like I think the main like direct like kind of view to people. And especially when you also see like TV shows and movies, it's always like court and things like that. But I think it's super cool how you're kind of saying that there are so many things like other than that, like all the paperwork and all the um kind of all the working with clients and then also all the sort of advertising to get the clients. There's a lot that goes into it before court. Um, and going into advice, if you could go back and give your high school self one or more pieces of advice, what would it be?
I think I could say, you know, take advantage of all the opportunities. I mean, I went to Scarsdale High School as well. There are a ton of opportunities and ways to connect with teachers or to, if you have an interest in something, you can, figure out how to develop that interest further. And you never know where it's going to go. I mean, it can, you can form a career from any kind of interest that you have, and it's important to keep trying and really be flexible with that and take advantage of all the opportunities. I think
Yeah,
that would be important. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think it's really important, I think, to try a lot of different things because there's so much out there. And I think a lot of times students think that they have to like narrow it down and try have like one straight path. But if you're sort of open to all these opportunities, then you can, maybe something else that you didn't know that you would like or find interest in, you did actually, and that could end up being your career. So, yeah, I think being open to a lot of opportunities is a great piece of advice. And then going into my last question, it's what advice would you give to high school students who are still unsure about what they want to do?
I would just say, be flexible. Don't worry about it. There's so many different paths that you can take to get to like the end game. I never ever would have thought in high school like I would end up as a lawyer, like business owner, and in this type of law. It that would not have been what I would have said, but I'm very happy with where it ended up. And I pivoted. I learned a whole different area of law and I was older. I was out of I didn't work for a number of years and I took a chance and learned something different. And so there are ways to, you start off in one direction, you decide, okay, like this is good, but maybe I need more flexibility, balance, more life work balance, whatever. And then you can pivot and find something else to do. And I think, it's really important to just keep being flexible. And I think I said this before too, like, there are people out there who want to be mentors and sometimes they just need you to like find them. It's almost like, they're not necessarily out there immediately, but if you seek out people who have similar interests to you or you find somebody who's willing to teach you, like take the opportunity and really put yourself out there and say, yes, I can do this. I'm willing to try and see if it's something that you wind up really loving. But definitely be flexible. There's more than one route. If like you majored in something and then you decided, okay, like I'm not finding a job, there's a career that from this major that I want, use it and sort of pivot and find something else. But you know, there's many ways to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. And I think being open minded is so important. And I think it's something a lot of high school students actually forget because oftentimes I think there's a lot of this like pressure to already figure everything out. But, being open minded and taking risks, just like you were saying, is super important. Um, and yeah, I think everything you said was, I think, super interesting and great. And your journey is so amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to interview you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you, RT.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of Careers in a Crunch. If you found today's conversation helpful and informative, be sure to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an interview. Thanks. Bye.